are experiences in the world that can happen and surprise us and happen in a matter of a few weeks that can transform our world. And this is about you being ready to handle whatever comes next. Our special guest today is Georgia Perkins, and she is an integrative nutritional health coach. She trained at IIN and has been on this journey for quite some years. She's a yoga sculpt instructor. She leads these powerful fitness classes online. She has some incredible products that you will hear about later if you're interested in more of this. She has a holistic approach to wellness, which is where we intersect, focusing on the mind, body, and spirit. So welcome, Georgia. Did I miss anything? Is there anything else you want people to know?
A great introduction. Thank you so much. It's so funny. I know that obviously, you know, my husband, Sam, and we got married like less than a year ago. So I feel like my name is probably Thompson some places and Perkins others, which might be confusing for some people, but we're still in the process of updating like my name on Zoom. So Perkins, either works. It's totally fine.
Great. Georgia Thompson Perkins.
Perfect.
So let's take a moment and let's just review burnout, because I want to start there. Some people say, oh God, it's like this overwhelming, experience of just feeling exhausted and lost and in chaos. Let me give you let's ground you in some science. This is how it's defined. I'll teach you then about the phases, and then we're going to move into a discussion, and we're going to get really practical here. The engineer in me doesn't stay in that theory for very long. I know if you're somewhere on the spectrum, someone you lead or love is somewhere on the spectrum, what you want to walk away from in a few minutes is with some tools that you can actually make practical and some resources that you can use should this all resonate with you. So let's move to the science. We're only going to stay there for a couple moments. You're going to see me 10 years younger, maybe 15. I want you to all know I'm not speaking from some theoretical stuff I read out of a book in 2004. I burned out, and I'm talking full burnout on leave for 3 months. And what I realized in that moment was that if I don't take care of myself, I then become the weight on other people. And so it is my responsibility to know how to draw healthy boundaries, to know how to pick up the signals in my body. It is actually not selfish. It is actually my responsibility to know that about me. Because if I don't know me, if I don't know what my limits are, how can anyone else know that? I have to not only know them, know how to decipher signals coming from my body, I also need to know how to articulate that to others and have the courage to speak my voice. And back in these days, I didn't know how to do that. And so what I thought back then was I should self-sacrifice. It was my duty to be a good daughter to my parents, to be a good doctor to my patients, and I wasn't even in the equation. And so let's talk a little bit about what is burnout. And I went to school in the 90s, 94 to 98. I went to University of Buffalo Medical School, went on to Temple in Philadelphia for a residency program in internal medicine. Can I tell you, nobody taught me what I'm going to teach you today. I had to learn this on my own. So the burnout triad is, how do you actually define burnout? In the simplest way, it's 3 items. Burnout is a triad combined. Okay, hold on, it's not moving. Here we go. Physical and mental, emotional exhaustion. So it's not just like, hey, I was fine in the morning, I had a really hard day, I'm really exhausted, I must be burned out. It doesn't happen like that. This is something that takes time, it moves over time, and it's almost like the kind of exhaustion that doesn't recover after weekends off or a vacation. So it's physical, mental, emotional exhaustion. It's also cynicism creeps in. And so you're really exhausted, but you'll hear yourself saying things like, you know what? It doesn't matter anyway. You know what? All the effort that I make doesn't really make a difference. When you start seeing this, you're moving into a different level of burnout. And then ultimately, the third one is ineffectiveness. And that's where I went sliding down the slope of ineffectiveness. And if you're wondering like, hey, how do I know what phase of burnout I'm in? Hold the phone. We're going to take care of that real quick right here. There's 3 phases of burnout. The first one is the alarm phase. Now, this is like the experience of when you jump on a treadmill and it's going a little bit too fast, right? Your heart starts racing, your stomach starts turning. You're like, oh my gosh, you get cut off in traffic. It's not going to be you getting cut off in traffic that sends you into burnout, but it's that feeling. It's like you're almost catching your breath, right? It's the alarm phase. This train is moving faster than I can handle. Now, what many of us do is we then move into, okay, this treadmill, I got my bearings underneath me. I'm going, and we keep going. We don't get off that treadmill. We just keep going. And then what happens is we move into the second phase of burnout, which is adaptation. Adaptation is when alarm becomes a way of life. And now you're teetering in this place where you can pull it all together. You can take care of the kids. You can take care of your sick loved ones. You can make work happen from home or, in whatever arena. You've adjusted to all of these things. And then one more thing happens and it tips you right over into exhaustion. And you slide down the slippery slope of ineffectiveness. And burnout, our goal is to help you understand it in a more concrete way. If it is not you right now, congratulations, but we have now become a world where we cannot function independently. Those you love and lead, you learning this information right now is going to serve you in the future in case you find yourself on this treadmill or sliding down the slippery slope. It's going to help you identify it in those you love and lead and be able to ask them the right questions to help them understand what's happening. Jamie Claire will put, if you want these diagrams, if you want, to take a burnout quiz yourself, Jamie Claire is going to go ahead and put that in the chat during our time together. So I don't want you to feel like, oh my God, I got to write this down and all this stuff. You're gonna have the ability to do a self-assessment, to share that with other people. And we have a lot of tools that can help you. All right, so Georgia, I've been following you on social, and you have been talking about your experience with burnout. You talked about a mindset reset boot camp, right? That you've been involved in and helping other people through. And the experience of actually going through burnout. Can you tell me if you relate to any of the triad I just gave, the phases? Tell us a little bit about how you figured it out for yourself.
Of course. Well, first of all, I love the way that you laid it out. I think that seeing that progression resonates probably with all of us, myself included, but I've never seen it sort of defined in that way. So that was, I think, very helpful. But personally, I think I definitely was experiencing burnout and probably kind of progressively getting myself there over time, similarly to how you laid out the idea of, you kind of adapt and that just becomes your baseline of chaos. And that's not where we want to be. But yeah, I think that this year, earlier on to sort of the first half of 2022 for me was very much sort of that slow progression of just feeling overwhelmed, trying to do too much, and becoming sort of, I don't know if complacent is the right word, but used to maybe just that level of, I don't know, exhaustion or just trying to do way too much overwhelm. And then sort of ironically at the same time, I was building a boot camp called the Mindset Reset, which really was a week-long boot camp that compiled a lot of the resources and sort of the foundational concepts that I use with my one-on-one coaching clients and packaged it into, again, sort of a week-long boot camp. And it was not geared towards burnout particularly, but I think that through that experience, I found myself having to be really honest with where I was in that moment. And because of that, I actually did take a lot of time off this summer, and some of it was circumstantial in terms of trips and traveling and having things that were already on the books, but it all worked out really for the right reasons. And I think that similar to how you said earlier, taking that time away and off is sometimes needed to kind of replenish that energy that you're feeling drained of. But I think the real key is when you're able to take that time off, when you come back, it's how do you stop yourself from going right back down that same path. And I'm personally very much a type A, wanting to get things done, very productivity driven and goal driven person. And so I have to be very mindful of how I take into account all of the things that I'm helping my clients do as well. So it's a good reminder to take my own advice. But yeah, I think that I'm feeling in a totally different headspace, and even physically as well, than I was months ago. And so sometimes it's almost, I wouldn't say positive or good, but it can be a helpful reminder to have those experiences and moments so that you do sort of redirect where you're giving your energy and your time. So that I can, to your point earlier too, be better for my clients. It's not just even about feeling better myself, but it's doing a better job at my job.
You bet. So you brought up a ton of concepts here. So one of them really is, as the world now shifts from putting their faith in institutions to finding individuals that they can trust, where they get their customized, personalized information. Who do I connect to? Who do I trust? Something really important to look for as you develop your own guides in the world that are really, the way I feel is it's kind of a two-way learning, right? So sometimes people say, oh, you really helped me. You're really my mentor. You're my guide. And I always think to myself, wow, just by your questions, you teach me. So I think there's this two-way flow. You definitely don't want to go with someone who knows all of it. If they know everything, you're in trouble. The second thing is when people express the way you do, the truth around what they're experiencing here. Listen, I teach communication, I teach burnout, I teach wellness, I teach a lot of things. That doesn't mean I don't get sick. It doesn't mean I don't react with my family. It doesn't mean I don't get burned out myself. All of us are going to fall off the wagon. That's called being human. The question is, how long does it take us to get back up?
Right.
And so this discussion is really about you having grace for yourself. We've also realized that I think of it in 3 levels. There's me. How do I spend my vacation? When I have time off, how am I spending that time? Is it actually restful and rejuvenating? Or am I using that to get caught up on every other thing? And then I wonder why, and then I beat myself up because at the end of it all, I'm still exhausted, right? How do you spend your weekends? How do you relax? Do you allow yourself that, or do you think it's lazy and selfish, right? So this idea of here's the other thing. Of course, when we're aligned with our true purpose in the world, a lot of people are seeking that right now. We are teaching the thing that we need to learn. And by giving it away to the world, we put ourselves on the recharger.
Right.
Because every time I give away something like today, I feel more rejuvenated. I've learned from listening to you, right? So I think your Mindset Reset Bootcamp that you didn't know was going to be about burnout, but happened to be that way to help heal you so you could serve others. That keeps the level of engagement, interest, purpose, and it keeps the authenticity, transparency, and vulnerability going. If you're listening to this and you're still in an environment where you're more worried about your image and how you look to other people than who you really are, what I would say to you is please find a community that's safe, where you can start to be who you really are, because that's when the healing begins.
Absolutely.
So lots of really cool ideas. And, when I think of you, G, and it's, she's goodness with G. I love the word goodness because, I think each one of us is searching for wholeness. There's a sense with goodness that resonates for me with wholeness, which is if you're looking for purpose in your career, if you're looking for love, if you're looking for to build a certain amount of wealth, if you're looking to leave a legacy, wherever you are, really what you're looking for is goodness and wholeness in your life.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
burnout, where you are from burnout to optimal wellness, in that experience, the closer you are to optimal wellness, the more you're going to have to give.
Right.
And if you're trying to give from a place of depletion, just imagine the level at which you are giving.
Mhm.
And so you speak about stretching, movement, mindfulness, meditation, and you give a ton of great whole foods recipes to get people started. And I think what I love about it is they're simple.
Right.
And if somebody's feeling low energy, right, and no one wants to make a change, making a change when you feel low energy feels like too much effort.
Right.
And I love that you make it easy. So on the healing process, so it sounds like can you give me the symptoms you were feeling? So when you were doing too much and you were feeling this exhausted, what are those phases? Alarm, adaptation, or exhaustion were you in?
I would say that's a really great question. I think I was probably in the adaptation stage for a really long time, to be
Yeah,
honest. And then I do think probably this winter, spring, I would have been probably in the exhaustion state. And I think that you make a really great point in terms of just feeling sort of disinterested. I think that was something that, I'm so passionate about what I do. And that's why I enjoy my work. And it's so deeply kind of woven in with my life. I think that I feel like I don't see my work and life as being separate,
yeah,
but I can tell when I'm burnt out, when I'm just not excited about it anymore.
yeah.
Because that's been a huge thing for me, is really feeling joyful and excited about what it is I do and what I'm sharing and what I'm giving to people. But I just started to feel sort of disinterested in, or not completely disinterested, but just sort of lackluster about the things I was doing, and
Yeah.
not as creative. I think, a lot of my work is it requires a lot of creativity, which is why I have always enjoyed, creating recipes and, writing and blogging and things like that, because it allows me to sort of flex that creative muscle. But when I'm feeling really lackluster and lacking creativity, then that's, for me, I guess I found
That's the sign.
is a sign, right, that I
Yeah.
need to take some time away. But I think that for me too, starting to go to therapy and really diving into sort of the big underlying mindset, maybe for me, of, why do I need to feel productive all the time? And am I attaching my sense of self-worth to, to how much I get accomplished in a day? And so really working through some of that has been very helpful, and sort of reframing again my mindset of what success and what productivity looks like has also been, I think, very enlightening, and sort of shifted the way that I approach not just my career and my, day-to-day coaching and things like that, but just it's really impacted my mood and my, again, creativity, and how I feel about just the things that I get to do during the day versus, all the things I feel like I have to cross off my list.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Jamie Claire to make sure she posts a link to how people can look at the symptoms, like the signs that come, because if you're picking this up at a time when you're disconnecting from the passion of your work, the question I would be asking you is, tell me what happens before that. Tell me what happens right before that. Tell me what happens right before that. Because when I look at you and your brand, what I see is excellence. What I see is you care about aesthetics and beauty as much as you care about depth and content. And what I would say to everybody on the call is, I think the future is going to be about the intersection of things we didn't think were related.
Right.
So where does, what is an engineer and a doctor doing being an executive coach? Well, I'm integrating the physical world with the mental, emotional, social, and spiritual worlds. So when you walk around thinking that your headache is an Advil deficiency, right? You've separated out the physical world from the angry experience you had with your partner yesterday, which was social, emotional, mental. right? And maybe even spiritual, a breakup, something that's happening, right? So this idea of kind of knowing where all these worlds come in, what I would say to you is if you're starting to pick this up at cynicism, okay, that means you blow right past that level of exhaustion. That's normal to you. You're an entrepreneur. You're like, you're going to change the world. And so the price of changing the world is sometimes being relentless and keep on going. And, and quite frankly, it's a badge of honor oftentimes in the world to do that. We believe those are the people that are going to be something and do something. And I think it's time to maybe think about the polarities. If you're someone who loves structure, what would a little bit of freedom and self-care look like? Because isn't a little bit of structure with freedom the way to really create and scale? I'm trying to think of if serving others is your goal, wouldn't serving yourself be in service of others? And so there's another polarity, right? And so these ideas about how we reframe the way that we thought things were. I want to talk to you a little bit about boredom. So some people write me and say, how do you know the difference between boredom and burnout?
That's interesting.
Big difference between boredom and burnout. I listen to you, Georgia, and I'm like, this girl's not bored for a minute in her life. Okay. She's like stretching, she's growing, she's going into the unknown, she's trying new things, she's coming up with creative experiences. So then the other question is, can someone who's really passionate burn out? I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Boredom is when you're playing it safe. You're staying stuck. You're not leaving a job because you're too scared about the stability, losing stability or security or whatever the reason is. You're too afraid to make a change and move to a new city, explore new things. And so staying in your comfort zone for too long is where there is no growth.
Right.
And when there's nothing new and nothing exciting, when there's no learning going on, that's boredom. That's not burnout.
Right.
Burnout is usually high achieving people, or someone who's really trying to do it well, a caring human being who cares not just about themselves, but others. So this stigma that like, you just can't handle it if you're feeling burned out, I think it's time that we all let that one go. It's usually the really high achievers. It's usually the people trying really hard in the world. It's the people stretching themselves beyond what they know. Now, let's move to that piece. You just described so clearly how someone so aligned and so passionate can feel burned out too. Me too. Me too. After I've left the hospital, 2008, I started my own company. I write books, I speak, I teach, I have created curriculums to transform toxic cultures into healing organizations. Do I burn out sometimes? Yes, I am on that spectrum. What has changed is how quickly I pick it up and how quickly I get back on my train of self-care. That time has shortened dramatically. I have also given the people around me permission to tell me when I'm not being myself, to tell me when I'm starting to snap and not realizing it. My team checks me, right? So I'm just curious, what are the ways that your husband, Sam, like, do you hear, does people say anything to you that's like, oh, wow, they've picked it up before I have?
Right. I love that. I think that having people in your life, to your point, that do keep you in check is super important. And I definitely think that my family, like, people that I'm closest to, family, Sam, close friends would probably definitely identify if I was feeling or just not being myself. And I personally think that for me, overwhelm has always been something that I think is my biggest maybe struggle, because I like to put a lot on my plate and do everything possible. And that's obviously what leads me down that path of burnout. But I think that I have definitely become better. And especially, when like having a partner and being with someone like that, often, it makes you have to kind of get out of yourself, and serve someone else as well and take their needs into account. And so I think I'm more aware of it, probably ever since having Sam in my life, because it does sort of just give you a different perspective, but he definitely does keep me in check and will encourage me to do less, actually. And one of my biggest supporters and always pushes me to do things that I would be scared to do, but at the same time also helps me probably rein it in and understand that I don't have to do everything. But I think that something that you said is so important, and that's just the idea of, like you said, limiting that time between, you know, self-care and feeling like you're on a really good, path, and burnout, or kind of going the other opposite direction. And I always say this to my clients, that all the things that we do, and as a health coach, we are working on a lot of things in terms of, diet and just establishing healthy habits and routines and a variety of different things from sort of a holistic perspective. But I always say that our goal together is to help them be more resilient to stress and to things that life will throw their way. And so same thing for me. I think that all of the self-care routines and things that I know are really important in my life, in terms of, meditation and getting outside and moving my body, eating, well, and fueling my body with the right things. Those are the little tiny daily habits that seem so simple, but that is what I've found, not just with myself, but obviously with my clients as well, that those little things are what help us become a more resilient person. Because it's not like all of a sudden your life is just going to stop throwing crazy things your way. It's really, you have to work on yourself to obviously become more resilient. And to your point, that's how you bounce back more quickly, or how you maybe react and respond to things with a little bit more ease and grace, like you said too.
Yeah, and here's true confession. Both of us have spent some time in Europe this summer. I got back yesterday, the day before.
Hey, you just got back.
I just got back, and I'm still doing the time change thing. I'm getting there. Thank God I'm a good sleeper. See, as a doctor, you learn eat when you can, sleep when you can, pee when you can. It's a handy skill. But what I would say is, this trip, I spent 10 days in Greece and I spent a week in London.
So great.
While I unplugged in Greece, what I will say is I had profound shifts in my thinking in London. I did a Joe Dispenza advanced retreat, and he's a Hay House author with me that 10 years ago we toured together. And he said, "Hey, Neha, if you're going to be in Greece, like, why don't you swing by London and do my week-long meditation retreat, the advanced retreat."
How amazing.
Okay, true confession. Yes, I teach guided imagery. Yes, I do 5-7-minute groundings at the beginning of my sessions. Yes, I want people to focus inward on themselves. Never in my life have I meditated for 35 hours in 1 week.
It's a lot.
And nor did I really get, until this week, the true benefits of meditation. And I think the way he got me there, I've read about it, but all of us know knowing something is very different than being it. And the way he got me there was really explaining and showing me the science and immersing me in the experience. I am truly different. I came home, and yesterday my assistant Phoebe said to me, "Wow, Nay, like, something's different about you. You're much more grounded than you were before." And I thought, really? Like, that's amazing. So pay attention to the people around you. I know sometimes the people close to us, when they say, like, something's off with you, we can react to them. I think it's really important that we take it as love, giving us signs outside of us that we might be missing. Right. And I say what we do now is you and I go live and take some questions for the last 6 minutes, 7 minutes, or however long we've got. I think 10 minutes, 11 minutes. Let's answer any questions. And I think giving both of our perspectives is going to be a really great integration for the group. So are there, I should have asked if there were any questions. Does anybody have any questions, Jamie Claire, that they would like us to start answering?
We have 2 in the chat so far. First is from Aziz. He says, do you think the burnout is a result of over expectations about yourself or others?
Okay. So Here's a rule. A rule is that everything is mirrors. So I might think that it's other people's expectations of me. Okay. When you want to heal that, you have to go to the root, which is, okay, it's a huge concept. So I'm going to try and simplify this. When I'm critical of other people, let's say I'm like a perfectionist and I'm like, oh, you didn't do that, and you didn't do that, and you didn't do that well enough. Okay. The root of that is I am self-critical.
Mhm.
So when you're talking about expectations, like, does burnout happen because it's other people's expectations of me or mine of me? Listen, other people can have expectations of you, but you've said yes to them. You said yes to this job. You said yes to this relationship. You said yes to this marriage, whatever it is. And so somewhere in it, you believe you gotta, here's the good news. The good news is when you take personal accountability and you realize that you're at the root of, oh, I can't trust so-and-so, I can't trust the world. I would ask you, how much do you trust yourself? Mm. So the flip, if you really want to change your life, you got to take personal accountability for your part in something. So that's one of the simplest ways I'm going to be able to say it.
Right.
Georgia, what are your thoughts on this?
I think that's a great point. And probably both to a certain extent. I just for like a personal example, I definitely have high expectations of myself. I'm sure you feel very much the same way. And I'm sure that also in its own way too, I have high expectations of others. I had high expectations expected of, I guess, me, or certain things expected of me growing up as a child and things like that. So I think that it probably is a combination of all the above. But I think from like my own experience with feeling burnt out, I'm sure as some of you guys probably feel similarly, is like I said earlier, just putting too many things on my plate and expecting myself to perform at a certain level across the board with everything that I'm doing. And so, I mean, I know you've said this word earlier too, but I think grace is such a beautiful reminder, and something that I'm really working on with myself is just treating myself like a human, like I would other people, and understanding that there are going to be times where I will not excel at every task that I put on my plate, and that's okay. So either I need to shift my expectations and be okay with not excelling at everything, or taking a few things off my plate so that I can do fewer things well versus a lot of things sort of okay, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what you just talked about was self-compassion, right? Having self-compassion. And a good way to notice is the way you talk to yourself what you would say to your best friend if they had that complaint to you.
Right.
If I said, Georgia, oh my God, like I'm just so exhausted. I just couldn't get it all done. I made a mistake today at work. It was awful. Like I really shouldn't have done it. I think I'm burning the candle on both ends. Right. Now, if I was saying that to you, what would you say to me?
You need to take some things off your plate, and you prioritize better the things that you really are passionate about and excited to do, and taking the things off your plate that aren't worth your time and energy. But yeah, we do not treat ourselves the same way most often. Well,
that disconnect is why we don't feel worthy oftentimes. Right. Now, this ties into another polarity that I want people to think about, which is, are you somebody who thinks you have to do it yourself to do it right? Because that means a lot's going to go out on your plate.
Right.
And if you don't have that grace when other people make mistakes, okay, you're not going to give it, you're not going to delegate, you're not going to allow other people to help you.
Right.
And so you want to understand, if that's you putting too much on your plate, then the question becomes, why is that? And if I allowed others to help me, what would that look like? How can I support myself in a way? What are the things that I uniquely need to do? I am beginning to transition on my team. This is our month of organizing everybody, technologically and otherwise, so that we can up level. And I'm starting to realize I can't be so in the business anymore. I need to be creating. And I need everybody else anticipating, right? And I need to be able to meditate. each day. I need to make time for myself, and that's going to serve our team.
Right. Well, I think, like you said, just releasing some of that control, or the need for control, because I think that really, to your point, is probably at the very center of burnout to a certain extent, is just feeling the need to do it all. And yeah, it's a great question of what would happen if I let go, and that's
letting go,
scary thing,
surrender.
right? A very scary thing for a lot of people that probably are experiencing burnout, because you're a person that loves control.
Yeah, I do love control. We love control. Well, I'm going to speak for myself. I love control because I don't like surprises. Surprises throw me off balance. They interrupt the schedule. Things can't go the way I want them to. All my to-dos don't get checked off the list, right? That whole experience. So Jamie Claire, anything else? What else is coming in the chat? What else can we answer?
We have two more. One from B. Hi, I was a year ahead UB in 1997. What do you say that given my position, I have to move at this speed and this 50 to 60 hour a week schedule? And if I don't, I can't have the position I have. I'm not burnt out, but I do worry about it because at 51, I can't sustain this schedule forever. I know the simple answer is to do less, but any advice is appreciated. Also, my hobby in time off is poker as a release, but since it has strategy thinking, I don't get stressed to win or lose. But do you think this type of relaxing is okay?
So of course, if poker relaxes you and is strategic, you like the strategic thinking and it's fun and you connect to other people and you unwind, your body's going to tell you whether that works for you. And if you feel after and during and before you're in your anticipation, your body feels open, it feels excited, it feels relaxed, it feels connected, that's how you know that this is something that brings your stress level, your stress hormones down. Now, the work piece of this, what I want everybody to know is anything complex, and I believe communication is complex, I believe wellness is complex, I believe illness is complex, I think being human is complex. All of the things that we're facing, like burnout, I like to think of them on a me, we, world level. So if you're like, oh, I can barely get my own perspective, I can't take on more perspectives. What I want you to do is, I want you to know you already do it. When you drive a car, you make sure your body, the me, has gone to the bathroom, is fed, has all the belongings it needs. You take care of me before you go to the car. Then you get in the car and you're like, okay, keys, environment. Is the music and the air the right temperature? Are the mirrors adjusted? You take care of what I call we, the environment. Okay. And when you're on the road and you're driving, you're taking care, me is handled, we is taken care of, and maybe you need some adjustments to it. And now you're looking at exits, you're looking at the cars in your blind spot, you're figuring all these things out. That's me, we, world. You already do it. It doesn't take more time, but it does take your awareness. So let's go back to this question. I would ask you to, as a physician, first of all, very cool that we both went to UB together, and you were a year ahead of me. What I would say is, you said yes to this job, and you want to go back to why you said yes to this practice in this city, doing this specific work for people. That's the me. How does it serve you? Security, stability, paycheck every 2 weeks. What was the thing you said yes to that you said, I'll exchange my time, energy, and money to become a partner here, to become whatever it is. Go back to why you said yes. That's me. That's the me, we world. The we. Pay attention to your colleagues. Pay attention to the environment. Pay attention to your culture. The top reason people left where they were in an organization, 10.6% was toxic culture. Maybe that's where energy is getting drained. Okay. So there's the we. So what's the environment, your patients? Like, do you still enjoy all that? Next is world. That's the institution in which you are functioning, the policies that they are giving, the way conflict is handled. Are you feeling heard? Is there fairness and flexibility in this, right? So it's a complex question of how you sort that out. And I promise you we'll be covering it in future talks more deeply. So Georgia, did you have anything you want to wrap up with on that? Because I know we're at time now.
No, I think that there's a lot, like you said, to dive into in that question. But I think overall, we all have a certain like personal adaptive capacity to take on stressors or, different things in our life. And so I think, like you said, sort of critically asking yourself, how is this serving me? Why did I take this in the first place? How is this impacting my health and my life and my relationships, et cetera, positively or negatively? And sort of asking yourself, am I equipped and able to maintain this schedule right now? And that doesn't mean that, that sort of personal adaptive capacity it will probably change over time. And maybe if it's serving you right now, it may not be serving you next year or in 5 years. But
so a good question is, have I outgrown this?
Right.
Community job, have I outgrown this? So
Right.
Georgia, this will not be the last time you and I connect. It's the first time, and I hope this is an ongoing experience. I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you so much for making this time for you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay, thank you. It has been heartwarming to have you, Georgia. Thank you, Jamie Claire, for all you've done to make this happen. And thank each one of you for your attention, for your time, and for taking care of you, dedicating this time to learning about yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Neha. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, guys, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.